So today we're going to take a look at what's going to happen if Egypt tries to form an empire in 2024, and they're going to be invading some of their neighboring countries in order to form the empire. So yeah, let's get right into the video. Now before starting the invasions, we can see that the Egyptians are now militarizing their country, and they're recruiting troops from all over the country, while at the same time they are trying to stabilize their economy because they're going to be spending a lot of money into their military. But yeah, now with all of the preparations done, and after some decades of militarization, we can see that the Egyptians are now ready for their first invasion, which is going to be of Lebanon. Now before starting the invasions, let me tell you that we are going to be ignoring their allies, and even if they are going to be invading a country which they have good relations with, you guys should probably not care about it because it's my video. But anyways, we can see that the Egyptian navy has now reached the coast of Lebanon, and they make a landing up in the north, and they pretty much take out the entire country of Lebanon without much resistance. In a peace treaty, we can see that all of Lebanon got completely annexed, but for now we can see that the Egyptians are done in the Levant, and they send their troops back to Egypt, who is now going to be preparing for a very major invasion. After some more decades of militarization and further recruiting, we can see that the Egyptians now declare war on Libya. Now Libya already is pretty screwed because of their civil war stuff, but anyways, we can see that the Egyptian army now has arrived on the front lines, and they're mainly focused on taking the coastline. Eventually though, we can see that the Egyptians were able to take all of these parts, and they also push in from the southern parts, encircling a lot of Libyan troops over here who had no choice but to go ahead and surrender. And now we can see that the Egyptian army has reached the gates of Tripoli, but for now they are pretty much stalemated. On the eastern front, we can see that the Egyptians are further pushing into Libya, but unfortunately this part is just a desert, so the Egyptians are facing a lot of difficulties over here, but they still manage to push in. Eventually though, we can see that the Egyptians have now besieged the city of Tripoli, and pretty much most of the coastline is now taken, and at this point we can see that the Libyans have realized that no one is coming for their support, and because of that realization, we can see that the Libyans go ahead and surrender. And in a peace treaty, we can see that all of the northern parts of Libya were completely annexed, and the remaining country of Libya is now a vassal state to the Egyptian empire. This was a huge success for Egypt, but they are far from stopping their expansions, and now we can see that the Egyptians are recruiting troops from Libya, and it pretty much seems like they are now ready for another invasion, which is going to be of Sudan. Now Sudan has pretty much the same situation as Libya. They're facing a lot of internal issues, and they're not in the best position to go against Egypt. But yeah, let's get into the war stuff now. We can see that the Egyptian troops are now pushing into Sudan, and they're pretty much focused on taking the coastline. Now because Sudan doesn't have a good military, we can see that the Egyptians were able to take the coastline, thereby landlocking Sudan. And at the same time, we can see that the Egyptians are now following the Nile River, and they're doing so without facing much resistance. Eventually though, we can see that these Egyptian troops meet up, encircling all of these northern regions, who then go ahead and surrender. And we can see that the Egyptians are now pushing towards the capital city of Sudan, and the battle of the capital city of Sudan ends in a decisive Egyptian victory. We can see that the Egyptians are now pushing around, and they encircle more and more regions, but unfortunately, because most of the important regions are now taken, we can see that the remaining parts of Sudan just go ahead and surrender. And in a peace treaty, we can see that all of the northern parts of Sudan were completely annexed, with the southern parts now being a vassal state, and now Sudan looks like South Sudan. Egypt looking pretty buffed, pretty good actually, but now they have their final invasion in Africa, which is going to be of Eritrea. Now Eritrea was caught with their pants down. I don't know what I'm saying, but as expected, this was a pretty easy campaign for Egypt, as Eritrea didn't have any military, and they were also not prepared. But they got completely annexed, and now the Egyptians are going to be focusing on the Levant. And please don't get me cancelled for this. We can now see that the Egyptians go ahead and declare war on both Israel and Palestine. Okay guys, they have declared war on both these countries, so neither of you can hate me. And for the first time in history, we can see that the Palestinians as well as the Israelis are now working together. And at first though, we can see that the Israelis and the Palestinians push in, and they were able to take out all of Lebanon. And at the same time, we can see that both these countries work together, and they take the Sinai Peninsula, and they get to the Suez Canal. Eventually both these guys are stalemated, but now a fully mobilized Egyptian army arrives on the front lines. We can see that they push back both Israel Israel and Palestine, and they were able to take out all of the Sinai Peninsula. And we can see that the Egyptian Navy also comes into action, and they make a landing in Lebanon, thus re-liberating the country or the province. But for now they are stalemated. Eventually this stalemate is broken as the Egyptian troops cross into Israel, both from the southern parts and the northern parts. We can see that they also push into Palestine, and eventually both these armies get to Jerusalem. The capital city falls, and with this we can now see that all of Israel as well as Palestine is under the Egyptian control. And in a peace treaty we can see that all of Israel as well as Palestine got completely annexed, and this was a decisive victory for Egypt. But the Egyptians still have some countries to invade, with those countries being Syria as well as Jordan. Syria already pretty screwed. They have a civil war stuff going on. They have multiple armies from multiple countries, both from this guy and this guy. So yeah, things not looking good for Syria. And Jordan, you have no military at all, man. So yeah, what do you guys think is gonna happen next? Well, we can see that the troops that were stationed in Israel are now pushing into Jordan, and the capital city was lost within 2 days, and this leads Jordan out of this war, and the Egyptian troops are now pushing into Syria. And unfortunately for Syria, they lost their capital city. We can see that the Egyptians also push in and take the coastline, but now with all of their major cities gone, which included their capital city, we can see that the remaining parts of Syria just go ahead and surrender. And in a peace treaty we can see that all of these parts of Syria as well as Jordan were completely annexed, and only one country is released here, including lands both from Syria as well as Jordan, which is now a vassal state to the Egyptian Empire. But yeah, this is Egypt at its peak. So yeah, now let's get to the new stuff, which basically means that Egypt now has to be divided up. And yeah, before I divide up Egypt, let me tell you the story. So yeah, well basically the king of Egypt, whose name was Suleiman, he died of natural causes, and he had 3 sons. And after fighting a civil war, we can see that all of these 3 sons come together and they decide how they're going to be dividing up Egypt, or maybe the Egyptian Empire. So yeah, let's now get to the divisions. Okay, now let's take a look at these divisions. We can see that the oldest son claimed all of the Egyptian parts, which was pretty much where they started. He also has this vassal state of Libya. Down in the south we can see that the second oldest son claimed all of these regions, and the second oldest son also has control over this vassal state of Sudan, and the youngest son claimed all of these regions, which include Syria, Palestine, Jordan and Israel. And he also got himself the Sinai Peninsula, but I thought that this wasn't enough for him, and I kind of felt bad for him, so I also gave him this part. I mean, these are the highly populated regions of Libya, so should be enough for you, man. But yeah, this is pretty much what happened, and this is also going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you guys want to see in the future. And thank you for watching.